that was my, the Cavern and the Oasis became my homeroom. It was like I would know where the dressing room was, and I knew that, and luckily at the Cavern there was a guy who worked at the Cavern called Bob Wooler, and I think he was the manager, and it could have been the owner, I don't know, but he was the man who paid us, and he really, when I asked why did we get so many dates at the Cavern when we were just kids, and the competition was enormous. It was like Beatles and Undertakers and Escorts and, bands much, much more, first of all, older than us, but much more professional and better musicians. And I said, why did Bob Wooler book us so many times? And, the answer was from the manager, who's still alive. He liked you. He liked the band. He liked the way you operated. He liked the kind of songs you were doing. And he knew that you would eventually find a bigger audience. So he kept bringing you back. And for example, the Cavern was a big one for Hermits because, first of all, we played it as Pete Novak and the Heartbeats, and we did really well. And then we were Herman and the Hermits, and then Herman's Hermits. And for some reason, we sort of crossed this. People who know the Cavern, which is nobody nowadays, but there were 3 sessions, and there was a lunchtime session, because in those days, mostly girls, on their lunch break, went to hang with each other and dance. Girls would jive on their own and stuff, and and we were the band who played at lunchtime. And we'd play, the other lunchtime bands were the Ravens, who were the Kinks, and there were kind of few sort of starting bands. But then there was the junior Cavern that started around 4:30 till 6:30, which was for kids on their way home from school whose mum and dad worked, kind of, basically. It was like it must have been really cheap to get in, because it was always full, and from 4:30 to 6:30. And then at 7 o'clock or somewhere around then, it became the Cavern, which is the Beatles and all the big band, Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. And for some reason, we sort of eased our way into that one, so we would be there all day, and we became cognizant of the way it worked. And England, being a very small country, people don't realize it's a very small country. Everybody who was in a group, a band, knew each other. We knew who their manager was. We knew we just knew each other. And once you got past that Cavern Oasis level, I can't imagine. I'm sure there's one in the same thing happens somewhere in America, in every city in America. Once you got into that level, then you started to get out of town. People would see, you could play Birmingham, and you could play Leeds, and you could play all the northern England, and maybe get to Glasgow and stuff like that. And in that transportation system, where everybody, first of all, you needed a van. You needed a lead singer, a drummer, a bass player, a guitar player, maybe a keyboard player, and a van. And we were all too young to drive a van, so we needed a driver. But the Beatles had a driver, and they were already old. So we started to travel, driving up and down England and traveling to different places. And we found that our thing worked almost everywhere, really, which was we would do songs that nobody else did. And we moved up into this next level. And in that level there, when you talk about what I miss, what I reminisce about, is that was, you would stop at 2 o'clock in the morning on the way home from Glasgow, and you would stop in a thing called a transport cafe, and you would meet all the guys from other bands and groups and girls from, I think the Honeycombs had a girl, and the Applejacks had a girl, and you would be expected to help each band out with the fight that they'd got going with the drivers of trucks, who didn't like anybody in a band at all. They just didn't like people with long hair. And that's a key part of my life, that I became part of a culture that how can I say it? A part of a culture that, it was like being in a union, it's like we were all plumbers and we watched out for each other. And like I said, what was astonishing about the whole thing in retrospect is that we all knew each other. You know, we knew people from every band, and you know, like, we didn't know the Beatles personally, but we knew Brian Epstein, and we knew Terry Doran, who was John Lennon's driver, and we knew, you know, there was this whole sort of this music culture that was all, you know. My mum lived in Liverpool, and she lived near this guy who was in the Searchers, and you know, the drummer from Freddie and the Dreamers went to my school, and so there was this whole sort of wonderful warm culture. There you go.